Gaza?
No, it's not.
No, it is.
No,
Do you know what the definition of a Holocaust is? What's the definition of a Holocaust?
I'm pretty sure it means to burn.
Yeah, it does mean to burn lots of people. So you're a Holocaust denier.
You measure it in numbers. So, like, when the population decreases, there's a genocide.
The far right were the worst people in this country. People like Nick Griffin are still considered a monster by the general public. But Nigel Farage has adopted absolutely all of his talking points, as have the Conservative Party, and they've suddenly become normalised. About 8 years ago, you could get in serious trouble for talking about how you found burqas and niqabs a bit scary and you didn't want to see more women having these things imposed on them. Whereas now, it's fair game. It's completely fair game. As long as you support Zionism. I'm stuck here. I got to deal with these rules, and I want to speak freely because I'm not actually saying anything offensive. I'm not swearing at anyone, and it's also not untrue. But I got arrested, and it never would have happened to Gideon Falter. So I call this Zionist privilege, which is this Zionist who runs the campaign against anti-Semitism is free to do whatever he wants to the police and actually tell them what to do.
He's kind of at the center. I know, but it's very loud. You can't hear it.
I get arrested and fees.
No, it's complicated.
Yeah, why?
Because you're a clown. You're actually a clown.
Can we get
Like, you
some
think you're more
cameras on
serious. Like, you think you're a serious person. Like that.
No, I'm just an Englishman who's talking about what happened to me. Do you want to join me here?
Huh?
Come here.
What do you mean, come here?
I'm not getting you to fight. I want you to stand next to me so you can be on camera and we can have this conversation.
You can shift the camera.
No, come on, you big brave man. Stand next to me. No one's going to get punched.
All right, mate.
You're awfully quiet all of
It's
a
not
sudden. This is
argument, it's
ridiculous.
insults. Do you have anything to say? You're just insulting him.
No, yeah, I think he thinks that there's a big conspiracy against him. Like,
No, I'm
It's
just saying that there's
against
double
all the people
standards.
of Europe and
all the
British
people in Europe.
Isles. There's no free speech in them.
There's no free speech against. There's no.
Compared to
I agree, there's no free
America.
speech. So like.
Yeah, we're in a much worse
where-
state than America.
Like, we had a Home
Much worse.
Secretary fired from her position for saying that Palestine marches are hate marches. I think that's like.
Yeah,
the
because
issue.
that's incredibly offensive.
I think it's offensive to be chanting Khyber Khyber out of your hood in the streets of London.
Yeah, that's because you're probably illiterate on Arabic. And because you're
I
also...
speak some Arabic, mate.
Oh, brilliant. Well done for you.
So,
Can you develop
do you know
some
what I mean?
sympathy
Do you know-
for
do
the
you know
people
what
of
I mean? Do you
Palestine?
know what Khyber Khyber out of means?
No, because this
So
is
it's
a
when
ridiculous
Muhammad,
plot
it's when
show.
the
I don't
it's when
care.
Muhammad went
I
in
don't care
and
about
he
these... Look,
he
we've already
murdered
done
Jewish
this once.
people and raped them, and you just
Have we not already asked these two gentlemen to have less of
No,
an
what have you
input?
done?
Have we not already
To the
asked these two
Europeans.
gentlemen?
What have you done to Europeans? Germans.
You're not even European.
But I don't think we're going to get useful
what are you
contributions.
doing?
I'm confused about because it's a free country. What do you mean? I'm not allowed to be here because I'm not white.
Guys, film the Zionists laughing at you because this
This
is
guy
hilarious.
says I can't
I don't know why it's
be
like,
here.
I care about the European people, yet you're trying to impose foreign
Because he's a Holocaust
protests.
denier. He's a Holocaust. Yeah, you are a Holocaust denier. Do you admit that a Holocaust is going on in Gaza?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No,
Do you
it's
know what the
not.
definition of a
Holocaust
Holocaust
mean?
is?
The Holocaust didn't
What's the
really happen
definition of a
in
Holocaust?
I'm pretty sure it means to burn.
Yeah, it does mean to burn lots of people. So you're a Holocaust denier. He is, by the way. Would anyone dispute?
Well, I don't know, usually I measure it in numbers. I usually measure it in numbers. So, when the population decreases, there's a genocide.
This man thinks that because the Palestinians have babies, there's no genocide.
And he's
I
a
love the
Jew.
Palestinians.
I'm not
He's actually
white.
asking.
Hitler had sympathy
Why
more
are
than
you
the
here?
Zionists.
Why are you in the UK?
Why
If
not?
I can't be here, why can you be here? You just literally just want to not English, we can see. There's nothing English about you.
Well, there's nothing English about it.
No.
Says you.
There's
Shit.
nothing
Fucking hell.
English about you.
Exercise my free
Hey,
speech
why-
and I'm still...
why- I'm
Let's
just-
hear Nick.
Can we make an effort to silence these two men?
What about free speech?
I brought
Yeah,
my
you get your own
plinth.
plinth, brother. There's plenty
I
of space.
brought my own
Plenty of
plinth to
space.
Speaker's
Just
Corner
don't disrupt
so
us.
that I can speak freely, and I am being prevented from doing so, right? By two constant contributions. You are allowed... Yeah, but it's constant. Like,
Hitler was Zionist.
No, he was not.
well,
Hitler was Zionist.
Also, don't mind this guy interrupting.
yeah,
Hitler was saying this.
because I will tell you why. I will tell you
No,
why.
he's annoying too. He's
I have a bit of solidarity.
At least you're being reasonable.
Do you know why?
Calm you guys.
We've been terrorized by
Yeah,
the Zionists.
brother, exactly.
Let him speak.
Because we've
Now,
been
we do-
terrorized by the fuckers.
We do have to let me speak, but I have more sympathy for this man because I do agree
Well,
with
you don't
him.
know my argument.
For 75
Because
years we've been
if-
terrorized by the Zionist terrorism.
Yeah, your arguments are more
75
important than
years.
yours. Because
Came
quite
out with
frankly, yeah, but your arguments are all about me offending
us
people.
and to
No,
stay
they're
with
not
us
putting
and then
words
they
on
start
people's
murdering
mouths.
us.
That is against the etiquette of Speaker's Corner. You're not having a
Not
debate,
really,
you're putting
because-
words on other people's mouths which they haven't said.
No, at the moment the etiquette of Speaker's Corner is kind of being wrecked by two men that won't let me speak. Now I know you're struggling to see that you're a part of the problem, but let's have a discussion.
Go ahead, bro.
Have you got any questions, or where should I leave this from?
I want to know about white erasure.
About white erasure. Okay, well this is an interesting one actually, because for the longest time, the far right were the worst people in this country. People like Nick Griffin are still considered a monster by the general public. But Nigel Farage has adopted absolutely all of his talking points, as have the Conservative Party, and they've suddenly become normalised. About 8 years ago, you could get in serious trouble for talking about how you found burqas and niqabs a bit scary, and you didn't want to see more women having these things imposed on them. Whereas now, it's fair game. It's completely fair game. As long as you support Zionism. And that's what I've noticed, is that it's kind of go time. It's go time with allowing people to get their racism out there and get their Islamophobia out there. And it's actually incentivized by Twitter. There are loads of accounts. David Atherton is a particularly nasty one who takes anti-Muslim clips, and since October 7th they've just been spewing out all the anti-Muslim clips they can. Here's the guy raping a chicken. Let's just label him Syrian, despite the fact that he don't look Syrian. And then we poison Europeans against Syrians, Libyans, and anyone that's kind of near Palestine. Right? Huge money goes towards these accounts that are spreading Islamophobic stuff. When a few years ago, you'd get in serious trouble and get shut down for it. I see this as an agenda switch. That's what I see, and that is that we now have people standing up for the voiceless working man, the Tommy Robinsons, the Nigel Farages, and the Katie Hopkins. Every last one of them stands with Israel. Every last one of them won't mention the US Liberty or the King David Hotel bombing. They won't mention the fact that Israel has killed many of our servicemen and offered us nothing in return, dragging our people into wars that they didn't need to be for. Do we all agree that the war on terror didn't secure European freedom in any way whatsoever? We were told for 20 years that because 9/11 happened, all the Middle East needs to be bombed to secure your freedom. Those troops are fighting for your freedom. So keep playing Call of Duty. There's a new Call of Duty out. Keep playing it, because we need you to do your duty. Was that their duty? It's not their duty. I believe that the job of the British Army should essentially be to secure the border. Like, there's a lot of non-white people here. Do you guys agree with everyone coming in on the dinghies at an increasing rate? Because it's producing very big animosity amongst the British people, basically, and I can see all of this. I'm literate on the far left arguments, and I'm literate on the far right arguments, so it's not really, there's no point in boxing me in, because I think we just need to understand where everyone's coming from and understand what their arguments are. So I'm a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and George Galloway and Nick Griffin, if you can believe it, because I believe they're coming from an honest place, and really the battle that we're facing at the moment is
So you're
not
gonna get rid of half of these people then if you support Nick Griffin? Just saying.
well, no, yeah.
Nick Griffin is like whites only worldwide. He's not exactly.
He's not.
Yeah, he
He's a
is.
consistent nationalist.
He wants to get rid of brown and black people
from the world.
from
3%
Europe.
of babies being born are white. There is white erasure, no other kind of erasure.
It's just interesting hearing that from someone that's not white. It's always exciting because no, I'll tell you why. Because actually, people that aren't white are quite happy to hear white people talk about race instead of being all like pretending it doesn't exist and
Until
being
they get
colourblind and all the rest of it. Like, I'll acknowledge. Hey, how's it going? I'll acknowledge happily that race exists. Racial differences are real. Your culture, your heritage matters. And I think it's really important. I actually think that white and black are diminutive terms, which basically, like, you know, there's differences between a
Can I say a
Nigerian,
more
a
helpful
Kenyan, a
term?
Jamaican. You're not all black. It doesn't work like that.
Can I
National
propose a
pride
more
matters to
helpful
me.
term rather than race is ethnicity?
Yeah, ethnicity, I
Race is
prefer
just
that.
it's a made-up
It's
concept
useless.
to divide people.
Yeah, race is used to, basically, until the word white was used to describe all of us, the Welsh could never be described as having privilege. And the Irish could never be described as having privilege. But as soon as they become white, they're part of this group that have privilege. And that's why I'm against this term white, because it's camouflage for the elites. That's what Me Too was. You know, Me Too was actually just a bunch of very powerful, very protected Jewish rapists in Hollywood getting outed. You find it funny, it's Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Dr. Luke.
That wasn't Me Too, Jeffrey Epstein. That was like a
Yeah, it was. No, it was. Do you know I'm friends with Jeffrey Epstein's first accuser?
I'm sure you're friends with Jeffrey Epstein as well.
No, I think you are, because you're the one that stands with Israel.
Oh, really?
Jeffrey
How is
Epstein
that
stands with Israel, I'll tell you that.
Bit of a stretch.
No, a bunch of women came forward about high-profile, powerful Jews in the entertainment industry, namely Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Dr. Lucas Gottwald. These women were Rose McGowan, Kesha, and Annie Farmer, and Virginia Giuffre. Some of these I am in contact with because I care very deeply about the Jewish mafia.
Show us the DMs.
And what they're... No.
Show us the receipts.
I can show you a 3-hour...
So you made it the fuck up.
Yeah, go for it.
So you said that Me Too was a white form of control.
It was a way...
Let me make my point. So you're saying that it's powerful white people made Me Too.
Me Too
So you're
was a
saying
way
that
of
you're also-
spreading the blame and sort of whitewashing the whole thing and saying all white men are culpable when a bunch of very powerful Jews had just been outed.
So you're saying that
That's just true.
Okay. I thought you were saying that it was white people saying that all Jewish, well, like Jewish
not at
guys
all.
were
No. No, the point is that all these guys that got outed were Jewish, and they all had connections to the Mossad.
Can I
in
give
Israel,
another example from
but
that?
we were only allowed to discuss it if they were rich white men.
There's another
I
example
just
of
think
that.
you make such big leaps from thing to thing.
But they were all Jewish.
You've all heard of that.
I
You've all
don't know. I
heard.
think you could just say he's making patterns. It's so easy to
But they
just
were
come up
all
with a random
Jewish.
All the
crazy
Rotherhams in
story.
Birmingham were Jewish as well, right?
Do you want to talk about Jimmy Savile and the Isle of Jersey?
Do you want to talk about Rotherham as well?
Well, no, I would argue that Rotherham and the Muslim grooming gangs is not the top-level paedophile cover-up in this country, and that would be evidenced by
Maybe the
Jimmy
Catholic
Savile.
Church as well. But
No,
yeah.
Jimmy Savile. The fact that Jimmy Savile
I don't
wasn't...
agree with that statement.
The fact that Jimmy Savile
the
wasn't
Catholic
outed
Church
until
historically
after he
did.
died proves that there is a paedophilia scandal going on in this country which goes above your Muslim grooming gangs. And Tommy Robinson and Carl Benjamin don't seem to discuss this one. They don't. They don't discuss what's going on the Isle of Jersey.
They actually did. They discussed this, the BBC, the paedophile statue being like defiled in Broadcast House. So
But
they do speak about
will
it.
you acknowledge that there was very clearly a long-term, high-level institutional cover-up that involved Jimmy Savile and children being raped?
Yes, it was the BBC cover-up. There's also the Catholic Church cover-up, the Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford,
Everybody
Bristol.
knows about the Catholic Church, bro.
Yeah, we've had enough
We know
Hollywood
about that.
movies. We've had
We know
Spotlight
about
made by
that.
Jews.
Well, can I? Here's something I'm not sure a lot of people know. Do you know? Have you ever heard of Pornhub? It's the most
Who owns
visited.
Pornhub?
It's the biggest pornography site on the internet.
Also,
Guess who
wait,
owns
wait,
it? Can I tell them who owns it?
I just want to clarify,
Alright.
you've called it a pornography site. That's kind of a misnomer. Pornhub is the world's largest crime evidence dump because there is no verification for whether the people you are seeing on that screen are there by consensual means or whether they are in fact adults. So and they have no verification whatsoever. So Pornhub is not just a porn website, it's a child human trafficking video database. But who owns it?
And who exposed them? It was Project Veritas, but you're going to say they're Jewish as well, so what's going on?
No, I think it's Wheeler that's the main person working on Pornhub. It's not Veritas.
Project Veritas are the ones who exposed it. Like people actually, like right-wing people who actually go out and have a job and, you know, are good and aren't just nobodies.
No. They don't have jobs. They have Jewish funding, and that's
Project
why.
Veritas.
Well, no.
So Jews expose Jews being paedophiles.
Hopefully, that would be the right thing to do. Every community should be doing that. Like every community should be exposing their paedophiles, but there's a lot of paedophiles in Israel. If you look at the sex offenders register,
You know
it's
that
just dot.
is like one of the only Middle Eastern countries where you can marry a 6-year-old and fuck him at like 9 years old. So
Yeah, I'm bored. That's
you can
the
talk
thing
about
too.
paedophile all you want.
Are you aware?
Those countries are shit. Like,
Are you aware, sir?
Why are they shit?
The only democracy in the
Why are they
world.
shit?
Let me talk to this gent for a second because he doesn't know. I've chaperoned.
Democracy, you know them in the world.
I've chaperoned this man's hero, Douglas Murray, at an event because at the time I didn't know that he was a Mossad agent. I thought he was just an intellectual author. But 5 years ago, I thought Douglas Murray was a very clever man who wasn't being paid by the bad guys. But then I noticed Douglas Murray during lockdown say absolutely bugger all. Did you notice Farage say bugger all during lockdown? Did you notice Carl and the gang all social distancing and even promoting the vaccine at the start of it?
No,
Now
they weren't.
take credit.
They weren't. I
Now they take
watched
credit.
pretty much every
This-
episode of A Lotus Eaters.
Yeah,
They did.
and you shouldn't
You're
because
just making stuff up, man.
no. If
That's
you
all you do.
if you go to my website, don't interrupt me and say I'm making stuff up because I have the proof.
They promoted vaccine
shut up
hesitancy from the beginning,
No, they
though,
didn't.
like,
I've
supply.
featured it in my videos, which you haven't seen. If you go to my website, jacked.uk, there is a tab on there which says 2021 Protest Archive, which shows every time I went down to London and filmed the potentially 1 million people that went and marched through these very streets, and often we ended up in this park, and I met brilliant people who were willing to stand up against something that never should have been allowed on any moral level. It's not even about the vaccines or like the threat of the virus. The government shouldn't have the right to tell me I can't go to my damn grandfather's funeral. And they did. I didn't get to see my granddad for his last year of life. And now, the people that you're supporting, they agree with me. They say that it was all immoral. They do. They say that this was all immoral. Yeah, you can see that. Were they there at the time like I was? Were they filming the protests that were right on their doorstep? No, they weren't. They were promoting the vaccine. And you can go to my website, jacked.uk.
They were literally promoting Dr. Malone, who's like the biggest anti-vax skeptic.
No, he wasn't the biggest anti-vax. We invented him already.
Yeah, and he was the biggest skeptic of it.
Why do you invent it? It's not someone I'm going to...
Because he's a scientist.
Yeah, I don't trust the science, bro. Don't trust the science. The science said that... Anyway, but the point I'm trying to get through, he's very angry. But I'm also very angry because the people that he's here supporting are liars. They are taking the credit for what members of the public like me went and did. Because 3 years ago, I went and filmed all of them. I don't know where Jess has gone, but she's here. She was a freedom protester at every time holding up yellow boards, and I went and I filmed them because this is a part of history. This needs to be filmed. It wasn't on the BBC, it wasn't anywhere. And that's the Lotus Eaters' responsibility, mate. That's Paul Joseph Watson's responsibility. They didn't do it. I did it. I went down and filmed them. And that archive is on my website.
Are you friends with PJW, huh?
No, I think he's a horrible rapist.
Okay, actually, I agree with that.
good man.
I actually do have the DMs for that. So,
Good man, yeah.
only thing we have in common.
Yeah, but
He's a nasty guy. No, I agree.
cool. Do your guys call him out or do they promote him?
Look,
I've made a video about Paul Joseph Watson, comparing him to Just Insane from Anti-Flag, a man who's accused of raping strings of young teenage fans, right?
I've seen it.
So these predators exist
You're
on
right
both
about
sides.
that. He tried to groom my friends, so you're right.
Awesome,
Well done, guys.
awesome. That's really important to me. And I've talked about it. Lotus Eaters haven't.
There's a whole network of women who...
I know. I know there is. Awesome. That deserves a high five. I mean,
We'll agree on that.
you talk to people about that,
Yeah.
that made me really happy. Man, people need to know that.
Well, people are tribal. This is a problem, right? Like, you
Yeah,
agree.
it's-
People defend who they consider in their tribe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of this. There's a lot of it. And that's the thing, I don't have a tribe. I've not been able to find anyone. I've not been able to find...
What we have to do is recognize our tribe, our ethnicity, our nation, but recognize that something higher transcends that, which is our common humanity. And the two, we can do the two. We can do both.
This is the problem with...
We can do both.
I mean, my grievance against the Lotus Eaters and co, and Paul Joseph Watson and the rest of them, is that I don't really quite understand why I'm not welcome on these shows, because apparently we agree on everything apart from Israel. and that is not enough. That doesn't seem, because they're willing to talk to other people.
They won't let you.
Well, no, but by this stage, I don't really understand why I've not been invited, because I've done enough. I've done a sufficient amount. I've done more than their general guests. No, but this is the question. Why is there a network who are scratching each other's back, who won't say shit about the worst crime that any of us have ever seen, which I believe is going on right now in Gaza? I believe that genocide is worse than anything that's featured in the Bible. Why aren't they going?
My opinion.
Yeah, go for it.
They have connections in GB News. They wanna. They're more interested in climbing the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. That's deeply
I'll
involved.
You
say
said
that.
that in your.
I did. I think
When Connor Tomlinson joined the Lotus Eaters,
Yeah.
they'd be more interested about getting in.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how the whole thing works. See, I am very much outside the system, throwing stones in, and I know that I'm not welcome because I believe the system is so corrupt. So if I see Connor sitting down with Liz Truss, I'm like, what the hell's the goal here? Like, are we just promoting the Tory party so that, you know, don't vote Labour for another 4 years? Huh?
What's the goal here?
What's the goal? The goal here is
You're a
that.
showman, right? That's why people you're a showman. You get
This is Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, this is Speaker's Corner. The point I'm making is that the biggest threat to freedom of speech in this country comes from an organisation called the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, run by a man called Gideon Falter. And Gideon Falter would love to accuse me of hating all Jews and send me into the dock and send me to prison. And he's going to be unable to, because every time I talk about the Jews, I'm really just talking about Gideon Falter and the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism and saying, this man doesn't speak for all Jews. I can name tons of Jews that say this man doesn't speak for them. However, Gideon Falter, since this organisation was launched, has had private audiences with Theresa May. He called for Mark Rowley to resign as head of the Met, and he was invited on Sky News and BBC and all the rest of it. The media connections he has is insane. And he always pretends that he's just a Jewish man. What happened was he was a Jewish man who just happened to be home on the way from synagogue wearing his yarmulke, and then the anti-Semitic hate march appeared and persecuted him, and he was the victim. And it's not true. It's not true. He is a hardcore Zionist that is embedded in every aspect of this genocide. So he's not just a Jew. And so that's what I'm really here to let people know, is that you need to know the name Gideon Falter, you need to know the name Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, and you need to look into what they're doing, because none of the free speech warriors on GB News, Talk TV, your Tommy Robinsons, your Katie Hopkins, not one of them will mention this organisation. And there's a reason they won't mention that organisation, and that's they've been told not to, because their funding will get cut off if they do. That's what I believe anyway, that's my theory.
So Hopkins, Robinson and all that, they're all getting funding, are they?
Absolutely. Yes, and I can prove this for you with Katie Hopkins. If you just search Katie Hopkins Rebel News, you will find footage of her walking around Palestine just bullying Palestinians.
Where's funding coming from?
Well, Israel,
Jewish
which...
NGOs, is it a whole list of them?
I mean, if we're getting really deep here, which this is, it's getting later, so it's going to get more religious here. And I think we should talk about usury in the central banking system, shouldn't we? Because fundamentally what's driving this is the idea that you can make money out of nothing, which is immoral.
So how much money are they getting?
I don't know. I know that, you know, there are certain names you can look into. Robert Shillman seems to be a big one. Are the Koch brothers one of these? You know, you can trace I'm not an expert on the funding.
The Henry Jackson Society. These people.
Henry Jackson Society. Majid Nawaz is a particularly odious one that I really don't like, because
Is he still getting funded? Does he seem
well, I presume that he is, because on October 7th, and for the couple of weeks afterwards, he was saying, don't fall for the trick, don't pick a side. And the more that I was researching Palestine, I was like, but it's Palestinian land that's been stolen. There is only one side. All of the arguments for Israel are completely illegitimate, because they don't give any justice to the victims of 1948.
Doesn't Nawaz call it genocide though?
Doesn't
Nawaz call it genocide?
I don't know, but my point with Nawaz is that he's been speaking at Israel rallies for years. He had an alliance with Sam Harris and Douglas Murray at these monk debates, which are basically used to control the thoughts of young people that consider themselves intellectual. The Waking Up podcast with Sam Harris was pretty much what you listened to if you're a philosophy graduate, which I am. It's like this was the podcast that was about philosophy that emerged about a decade ago, and they were so focused on Islam. And now I'm looking at it going, pretty weird how all these really well-funded Jewish atheists just haven't heard of the Talmud and don't seem to have anything to say about Jewish religious extremism, which exists. Are they pretending it doesn't exist? Are they claiming that this red heifer prophecy isn't part of it and that there aren't this building of the third temple, etc.? Like, how is it possible that these guys that spend all their time rabidly critiquing Islam just never mentioned the religion that they're actually genetically related to? It's too suspicious. How have they got such an alliance with... Why is Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris apparently on the same side? Because they appear to be. They might be arguing against like Islam, but when it comes to Israel, they see things the same way, and that's impossible because Ben Shapiro has a religious belief which justifies it, and Sam Harris absolutely doesn't.
What's the red heifer story?
Oh, it's bizarre. It's that they've got to produce 5 cows that don't have any hair on them that isn't a perfect red. Is that right? And then
like that,
not even one hair that's not red. And they've already been bred in Texas. And then I think when they get to a certain age, one of them will be slaughtered. Or they'll all be slaughtered, but they need 5 of them to ensure that there's enough. This is all real.
It's
and
a project to
bizarre.
rebuild the temple. That's the
Yeah,
The
which
Greater
I-
Israel of Judea and Samaria, which goes through like Lebanon, God knows
So
how
you
many
think
countries.
that's in the pipeline then, the third temple?
They've already just sacrificed them. I think the sacrifice has happened.
It's what this leads, really. Is
Won't that like trigger third World War? Like the Muslims aren't going to accept the third temple.
Well, that's the thing. We're clearly on the cusp of it, with all the agitation and such. And the question Nick Griffin is asking is like, why have Farage and Tommy been brought out now, and what is their message going to be? And we notice that obviously Tommy is, one of Israel's loudest Goy supporters, and Nigel Farage a bit less so, but he's certainly neutral.
Well, whenever he speaks about this, it's always the demonstrations are full of jihadis. That's all he ever says.
Yeah, exactly.
And he never condemns anything that
And the point is, I'm fatigued of being told to be scared of jihadis. They tried for 10 years.
I've been on the
and,
marches.
like,
These are
Well, they're not
these are-
friends.
well, no, but what I am saying is that I would say the Muslims in this country, considering what we are told about them and how violent and bloodthirsty they're supposed to be, they've been pretty well behaved since October 7th. I've not seen any terrorist attacks. I've not seen any violence on these protests. So,
There's been a few in Germany though, some knife attacks.
Germany is a really unique place in terms of censorship, though. It's really thuggish, from what I can tell, and I know why. It's a very, very big part of their history. But I think, I don't know, we're the country that has Speaker's Corner. That's really it's the reason I'm here today, is because you can't go to free speech events and speak about what I consider to be the truth, which is that Tommy Robinson is a servant of Israel. He's a Zionist shill, and he's been paid for 20 years to terrify the UK population about Muslims and leave them in a confused state. And I want those Tommy supporters to move to the next stage, because they're kind of trapped in there. I know they're not here today, but it's just quite scary to see, especially the amount of money that is going into it. Like that guy who was here earlier, he was mocking me because I don't have any funding. And it really is what, this sits with me, is that if I didn't talk about Israel and Jewish power and Palestinians, I probably would have a pretty good job. I probably would have a pretty good job in the Lotus Eaters studio or Talk TV or GB News, as long as I was silent about the vaccines at the time and now loud about them. But I can see so many men that are kind of my peers that every single day they go up and they just rant about the Islamification and the trans agenda and that's their job. Not to make it my pity party, I can't work in the industry that I practiced working in, which was DJing. I was a professional DJ, got hit with cancel culture there, also got hit with the corporate world. So I now work a manual labouring job alongside Hungarian immigrants because it's the only thing I can do where I know my boss won't fire me for having an edgy political opinion. He just cares that I do the work, and it allows me to do this on the side. And I stack that next to all of these lot in their little back scratchy network. Like, it was a really interesting moment there, what happened, wasn't it? Because that guy knows the truth about a guy who is a predator in that story. And he went, what's your opinion on this guy? And I went, I think he's a predator. And he was really shocked because he knows something that I know, and we shook hands over it. And I was like, mate, get the word out about that guy, because there are sharks in every wing of politics, from left to right, whatever. There's bad people who will use their profile to lure people in. And
Just a rumour though, or is it a criminal investigation?
I mean, criminal investigation, but like enough women have come forward that you're like, yeah, that's a pattern. I mean, my perspective, I'm very believe survivors, unless the information's coming from the IDF. That's basically my position. I believe Amber Heard. I certainly believe Rose McGowan and all the people talking about Harvey Weinstein.
You don't believe IDF?
I don't think I get to hear from Hamas, to be honest. Like, when we talk about hearing from Hamas or Hamas propaganda, I'm basically just seeing pictures of dead children, which I do not believe are faked in any way. So I know that the Zionist argument is about Hamas numbers and that they're lying about the numbers. It just seems absurd to me. I don't see any footage of traumatized Israelis, like never. I see gloating Israelis. I see tons of footage of IDF soldiers prancing around with the bras of the Palestinian women whose houses they stole.
Well looked after hostages.
Yeah. Actually, did you notice this? That some of the Israeli hostages have come back having put on weight. Now that's quite something, considering the Israelis want to tell us that they're just a barbarous rape cult. They rape babies that don't even have orifices big enough to get a penis in. Sorry to be graphic, but that's the lie that we were told on October 7th to justify all of this nonsense, is to make you see Palestinians as human animals that are barbaric. I don't know. I've bought a book called, what was it called? Against the Loveless World. It won the Palestinian Book Award a couple of years ago, and it's written from the perspective of somebody who was trapped in an Israeli prison before all of this kicked off. So I'm learning about what life was like for Palestinians before October 7th, and it's just as brutal. The only difference now is they've pretty much got certain death on the cards. It's just the moral right of all humans to stand against this. The idea that this is being done in a Christian country, people who claim to be Christian, these nationalists who say, yeah, it's a Christian country, we don't want Muslims here. We don't agree with collective punishment. If somebody does a crime, we don't agree that you get to murder their entire family. But that is the logic that they're all using. They're saying, well, they voted for Hamas. What did they think would happen? They're using it as that justification. Christians don't believe in this. Muslims don't believe in this. But it does look like Jews do. That's what it's looking like. Why? What was I wrong about?
We do not destroy, we do not murder the families of Jewish people. Do not murder the families of terrorists.
What's happened?
What's happening?
Well, what about the 70,000 tons of bombs that have been dropped on Gaza, which is more than the total that was dropped in Europe during all of World War II, more than Dresden, London, and all of them combined?
So on the 7th of October, Hamas murdered 1,200 Jewish people.
No, the IDF
Hamas didn't.
That is a load
We've
of
been
rubbish.
there.
Let him speak.
Yeah, but
Let him speak.
No, but we can't.
yeah, but he's not going to talk about
No, because this is from Israeli news sources. We can confirm that, like, the holes in the buildings, I think, is the biggest bit of the most obvious evidence that some people were killed by IDF on October 7th. Apart from the helicopters, which just show them gunning down indiscriminately anyone that's running. I've heard interviews with survivors. We've heard.
They all know. I mean,
We've heard interviews on Israeli media. This is not coming out of Hamas, of survivors of the Nova Music Festival who say that they were being shot at by Israeli forces, and the most obvious one is these massive great holes in the buildings, which are very and tank trucks. Sorry,
and
tracks.
cars that have been
the tracks
incinerated.
of tanks going straight into these buildings. Hamas don't have tanks. The IDF have tanks, and a lot of this destruction looks to have been caused by tanks and helicopters. And the issue that I've already expressed to people here is that in Britain, in the US, we have a fantastic culture of punk, and I consider myself part of that lineage, just kind of not so music based. I live in the world of politics, but the ethos of it is I don't trust the state, I don't trust the government, they lie to us about everything. There's the thalidomide, that's a pretty bad example, you know.
You believe the Gazan Health Authority?
No,
you
I believe
them. You believe
no,
Al Jazeera? You
yeah, I
believe
don't.
them.
What about the ICJ? The
I believe
ICJ?
the ICJ.
Ayatollah Khamenei?
ICJ?
Yes.
Yeah. You believe them?
I believe the footage, I'm saying.
Oh, this man believes his family. Yeah, thank you.
My cousins have been killed in Palestine.
All right. So that's not all.
The issue is, do we have the right to criticise the Israeli government?
He's a white man brainwashed.
Yeah, go for it.
That's what is the lie was a coordinated attack by Hamas, right?
Yeah.
What was the reason for it?
That's true. Yeah, no, you are right that no, you are right that, but the issue we have here is, you know, there's lots of cameras. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism know who I am. They would absolutely love to take me to court, and it is illegal for me to say anything positive about Hamas in this country, even at Speaker's Corner.
I'm not saying you should say anything positive. I'm saying,
Yeah.
what is the history behind October 7th?
And I'm slightly
Why did
scared
the-
to
why did
talk
the
about it because it might
revolutionary
become a
movement
crime.
stand up and attack Israel? What was the reason for that? And that's what you need to
Yeah, no, the reason is 75 years of oppression.
Yeah, exactly.
That's as simple as that.
I mean, so talking about bombs and signs of polls done by the IDF doesn't make any sense. It's just
I mean,
The war
this
started.
might be
The killing started before the 8th. In 2005 or 6, Israel evacuated all the settlers from Gaza and gave it to Hamas, and they've just used it to build tunnels and to prepare to murder Jewish people. That's what that is their founding charter, is to murder Jews, and they're sticking to it. And they've said they would do it. They have said they would happily repeat the massacre of October the 7th.
Why do you think that got rooted into that Middle Eastern area? What then happened in the last 100 years, which materialised a disgusting organisation like Hamas? Can you think of any event in the last 100 years that may have happened? Or does not anything in the last 10,000 years not exist, according to you? What event happened in the last 100 years that may have resulted, or directly resulted in fact, into the horror of the 7th, 8th?
She considered as
Do you think of any?
He said, she said,
You have to go back to the 1880s. You have to go back hundreds of
Just
years.
move away a little bit. Let him speak, because it's two conversations. Just move back a little bit.
You have to go back over 150 years to when Jewish people were fleeing the pogroms in Russia. Some of them went to Israel and legitimately bought property. And when they bought the property, a lot of the Arabs were unhappy with those who had sold them the property. But
So are you saying people that are repressed is wrong? Are you saying the Jewish people that were repressed in Russia, was that wrong, or was that right to do that against the
Stop
Jewish
talking
people?
white and black.
it was wrong for the Russians to oppress the Jewish people.
Is repression wrong, or is just repression against Jewish people wrong? Which is wrong? Which is just
Repression is wrong,
And you can always test.
but self-defense is necessary.
Okay, so can you imagine once upon a time, I don't know if you remember this, you probably won't, but once upon a time there was a country called Palestine, and if you Google this, I know you're probably surprised by this news, and then another group of people repressed a group of people in Palestine and pushed them out of an area that they had bought.
Just move back a little bit while he's talking. That's all. You can come back after. We don't want two conversations. That's all.
That they had bought themselves. So they were oppressed. Would you condemn those people that repressed those people in Palestine as well?
I don't think they repressed the people in Palestine. They bought property legitimately.
Yeah,
and
so
were
did
just trying to
Palestine
live
people.
there.
Yeah. Palestine,
sides-
you acknowledge Palestine used to exist. You remember that far back in history.
Before 1948, there was Palestine.
Yeah, so you do actually have a memory. You are aware that Palestinian people, Muslims and Jewish people and others had bought homes in the area of Palestine, and you acknowledge that, and therefore you condemn any repression against people that have legitimate ownership of that property there. Do you? Because I don't think you do, unless you have no functioning memory whatsoever, which you are sort of demonstrating an individual with no functioning memory. But you do that for your own personal. No, he does it for his pleasure. You condemned repression of people, and now you're celebrating it. How is that hypocrisy manifested itself in a single individual in front of me? Can you explain that? Okay, you can't explain it. Don't even try to explain it, because you can't explain such hypocrisy. What I do recommend you doing is going away and thinking about this over the next year, how this hypocrisy has so infused your whole life that hypocrisy is higher than religion, higher than God, higher than philosophy, higher than any other purpose on this planet. And remember what you said to me, and these people will bear witness. You said that repression was wrong of people that have legitimate legal ownership of property, ergo a building, and yet somehow
Self-defense is.
hang on,
you have to defend
no.
yourself.
You said these words, not me. I didn't force
yes.
these words into your mouth.
I'm saying
You said, and the hypocrisy is, how come if you're from one particular philosophy and made-up religion, I'm sorry to say, made-up religion, that it's okay to repress and murder another people from another made-up religion. So how is that even possible? How can you stand in front of me and have any self-respect as an individual, as a human, as a person with beliefs and ideas and concepts, and state that repression is wrong as long as it's not me being repressed? You've become for us, and you've become for us, and you've declared that's the kind of human being you think is noble, you think is spiritual, that you think is intelligent.
I've said
and
nothing of the sorts.
So you said repression of Russian repression was wrong, wasn't it?
I said repression.
And I think
is
we'd all
wrong.
agree with that. When you're, no, he hasn't. Because
getting the
I want you
chance to say it.
I want you to go away and think about the hypocrisy you've become. And we can't all become that hypocrisy. If you think repression of one group of people is wrong, which that gentleman just clearly outlined, defined, and is absolutely right, but that means it has to extend to other groups. And if you just extend it no further than your own garden of fence or religious creed, which again I'm afraid is made up by man, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't mean it justifies you murdering other people on this planet because you think that repression against the people you don't like, or you've been told to by your religious leaders, is absolutely holier than any other spiritual philosophy, historical elements that you've been infused with. That gentleman was a hypocrite, but he doesn't care because he knows that his religious leaders have told him that his actions of genocide and murder and repression, all things he disagrees with, by the way, are good as long as the right people are doing it. It doesn't matter how right you are or close you are with God. It is irrelevant. If you're murdering and repression other people, that is a war crime and should be faced with jail. Not murder, jail. Jail and legitimate and traceable evidence to back up a concept which you would have thought was beautiful and simple, which is, I don't kill him because of his t-shirt. Sorry, I don't want to kill him because of his t-shirt. But literally, the war in Gaza and all religious wars is no more complicated or deep or spiritual than me killing him and taking his t-shirt. That's what it boils down to. That's how pathetic your religious leaders have treated you on all sides of religion. Yes, be religious, but please write your own religious text. Doesn't matter if it's Muslim, Jewish, whatever religion Can't think of any other one. Christian. There you go. I thought. Thank you very much.
Like not committing a crime, and I was at.
You were just standing there.
No, I was talking about Tommy Robinson's various crimes to his fans, and I was also talking about the campaign against anti-Semitism, who are the group that instructed the Met Police to arrest Tommy back in November, which was then declared unlawful, and then they had a big protest about.
So they deliberately.
Well, essentially, somebody gave the orders to the Met Police to arrest Tommy Robinson in November, and it was declared unlawful, and it was a big news story, and basically like, look, the Met's doing two-tier policing. Why did they arrest Tommy?
Talking about on the internet now.
Yeah. Oh no, he's now got another court sentence because he. Well, that is. I mean, that is because he's been lying about a Syrian school shooting. He said he was like touching girls up when he wasn't. So he's stuck in a libel case for that, which goes on forever. And I think that's because he's an idiot, and he shouldn't have said that this Syrian school child was touching up girls when he wasn't. So Tommy Robinson will run this permanent victim campaign.
I think Tommy Robinson's fantastic.
I don't, because I know him better than you do.
I think he's. Well,
Do you know what his real name is?
Don't say that.
Do you know what his real name is?
Yeah,
What
I'm
is
his
it?
sister.
Hey, not.
I am.
It's Tommy's sister.
Yeah.
I'm not going to believe that. That's a bold claim.
I'm Tommy Robinson.
So what's your surname?
Robinson.
Well, that's not his surname. His surname is either Yaxley Lennon or Harris. None of us are really sure. We've seen about 5 names, but his name isn't Tommy Robinson. So, but I've known people personally who've worked for him. I've known people who were Tommy Robinson supporters.
A load of fucking shit.
Yeah, but I'm at Speaker's Corner, and that's my right.
Listen, this is our country, right? And if you say what it fucking
Yeah, and I'm an Englishman who just got arrested 3 weeks ago
and
for talking about.
Tommy Robinson being arrested.
I was. Yeah, send all the Muslims back to Islam land. All right, yeah. No, the point is that Tommy Robinson is a paid servant of the terrorist state of Israel, whose job is to make British men like me and British women like you terrified of people like this. That is his job. That is his job, and he's been funded by Robert Shillman, the Henry Jackson Foundation, and all the others. And you can tell this because since October 7th, Tommy Robinson has been completely uncritical of the state of Israel as they go about their genocide. Now, what I'm saying is that that's treason. That's treason. He's misleading people like you. You think he's a hero, but you don't even know his name. But you don't know his name because he's an actor. No, he doesn't. He supports Israel. No, he supports Israel. Because if you support what Israel is doing right now, that necessitates the movement of all the remaining Palestinians and eventually the Libyans and Syrians into Europe. You can't support Israel without encouraging mass immigration into Europe because you are displacing the people whose land is rightfully theirs. So you don't get to stand up and say, I'm a nationalist, I'm a British nationalist, without giving the same right to Palestinians.
Why is it that Victor Wallbrand is got good relations with Israel and he's a nationalist, right?
Exactly, that's a good question, isn't it? Isn't it funny how every single far-right leader that has just emerged across Europe is again completely uncritical of Israel? Geert Wilders is a wonderful example. I imagine Le Pen hasn't said anything about Israel either. Can we name some others? Farage is our one in this country. Farage is our version of Trump. Trump is actually more pro-Israel than Joe Biden. He said, yeah, they just need to get the job done, finish the job. What does finish the job mean? What do we think finish the job means? Kill them all. That's what it means. Get rid of them. Get rid of them, because the only way you can defeat Hamas is by killing every Palestinian orphan. That's what that means. Because that is my conception. That's what Hamas are. They're just Palestinian orphans. Right? And we need to normalise that viewpoint, because I do believe women like this have had a tremendous amount of propaganda to believe that, to be terrified of this word terrorist, which I don't believe means anything. Terrorist and anti-Semite, we need to dispense with these terms and talk about what we're actually seeing here. And what I see is that the campaign against anti-Semitism pretends to be a charity. It is illegal under UK law for a charity to basically meddle in politics. So here's the rules. A charity cannot endorse a particular political candidate or support or denigrate a particular political party. What they are allowed to do is oppose an individual candidate. So the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, if they came out and they said, don't vote Labour, that would be illegal. If they came out and said, vote for Boris Johnson, that would be illegal too. It is, for some reason, not illegal for them to go on a several-year campaign against Jeremy Corbyn and every supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. Right? For some reason, that is allowed within the loophole, even though the effect is exactly the same. Because if they're saying, don't vote for Jeremy Corbyn, they're saying don't vote Labour and vote for Boris Johnson because it's a two-horse race, right? And that's exactly what happened in 2019. I believe that they should be stripped of their charitable status because there's no evidence that they help the needy. A charity, by definition, is an organisation, a fund to help the needy, and you can change what type of needy helping that is, but you need to be shown to be helping people who would have had a worse life before you intervene. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, all they do is punish people for things that are not crimes. My favourite example of this is Alison Shablow, who is a woman that was sentenced to 2 prison sentences, I think, for singing songs. Has anyone heard about this? I know you guys have, but you've heard about it, obviously. But most people don't know about Alison Shablow, one of the most insane free speech cases in this country. I've spoken to her several times. Every journalist covering freedom of speech, such as Toby Young, who runs the Free Speech Union, right? Douglas Murray, again, there's a big attack on free speech in our country. None of them talk about Alison Shablow, who basically, what she did was she sung a bunch of songs on the piano and recorded it and put it online, which featured claims that had been made about the Holocaust, which have since been retracted, i.e. people were turned into lampshades and soap. There are certain lies about the Holocaust which were put out, which have been agreed that they were just ridiculous and no one believed them, so they've been retracted. She sung all of them on a... this is too loud, guys, so if you want to argue, can you move further back? Yeah, so I believe that that should be legal, and in fact is legal. It is perfectly legal to sing satirical songs about whatever you want. People might find it offensive, but those are the principles of this country. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, a Zionist organisation, opposes freedom of speech. So they got her sent to jail for 2 rather lengthy prison stints for singing songs on the piano and putting them online. Did you know that was a crime in the UK? Because it wasn't a few years ago. It wasn't. It's not supposed to be, and it's only happening because we have this lobby group who is submitting stuff to the CPS and forcing them, putting so much pressure on them to convict people of things that aren't crimes. Because free speech is supposed to matter in the UK, and that's why we have Speaker's Corner right now. So I hope I get some alliances today by saying the primary threat to freedom of speech in the UK is the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, what they've done to individuals in terms of getting them sent to jail. Another one is Tara Ahmed, who was a woman who was a very loud voice during the lockdowns against the government and what they were doing. But she is also a loud voice for Palestine. And they were able to find some very obscure Facebook comments which were in a private group. She didn't put out a public statement saying these things. It was in a private group, and it was a response to someone's comment. So not a single like on this comment, barely anyone had seen it. And what she did was she likened Grenfell Tower and what happened there with the corners that were cut in terms of the cladding. These people were considered disposable, was her viewpoint, because of our corrupt government, and she likened it to what's going on in Israel-Palestine, and I think she used the phrase Jewish sacrifice. They found that, sent her to prison. Did you know that was a crime in the UK? Because it wasn't a public broadcast. Not really, it was in a private Facebook group. This organisation, Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, they will go through the complete online history of any Palestine solidarity campaigner and find any word which proves that they have a problem with Jews collectively. And then they will get sent to prison for it. And this is happening
Do
to
you think
women.
that's more for people who are white than, say, if it was a brown or black person?
Well, I wouldn't agree so, because Tara wasn't white. Nope. It's called Tara Ahmed. It's not a very white name. So yeah, no, there's, again, that's a narrative that white people have it worse and non-white people are allowed to say whatever they want. They inculcate this into like white people like me. I'm the target audience for that kind of messaging, is that there is an anti-white agenda. But black people are the targeting of the Black Lives Matter stuff as well. That's not to say that there are no issues there, but every group is being sold a grievance narrative and being told it's unfair for you. And there's one for everyone, and I think the Jewish one is probably the most threatening at the moment, because we are dealing with a situation in the world today where there's 6 or 7 million Jews living in Palestine that believe that if they don't continue doing what they're doing and slaughtering the indigenous people, they're not safe anywhere else in the world. That's what they genuinely believe, and it scares me, because how are we going to deal with this as an international community? Yes, sir.
Anti-Semitism, a kind of censorship.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I believe that I prefer the term anti-Jewish bigotry, right? Because we would understand what we're talking about there. If I meet someone, I find out they're Jewish, and then I form a bunch of suspicions and prejudices about them based on that, I'm a bigot against Jewish people, basically. If I'm like, yeah, I don't trust you because you're Jewish, well, that's bad. And I base it all, it's Martin Luther King logic, like, how are they acting? Right? I could, Ilan Papa, Norman Finkelstein, Gabor Mate, I can list you tons of Jews that are very, very loud voices for Palestine, and I think they're wonderful, wonderful people. And that's my proof that this has got bugger all to do with my prejudice against Jewish people. However, the Israel lobby, their job is to convince you and everyone that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are the same thing. And I think the reverse is true. If you're saying that anyone who opposes Zionism is an anti-Semite, you're discounting the 15% of Jews worldwide that oppose the state of Israel. You're saying that their voices do not count, and they're not even real Jews. They're self-hating Jews, or they've lost their Jew card. Did you know that you can get deported from Israel? 2 things. 1, standing up for Palestinians, and number 2, converting to Christianity, which I think is a very interesting one. You can't live in Israel if you convert to Christianity. And that, to me, is because it's a belief system. It's not really about this ethnic claim of being a Jew, because it doesn't really make any sense anyway. The claim that they're actually using is, my grandparents fled World War II as a result of the Holocaust, and therefore the Old Testament is written about me. That is the actual claim that is being made by the Zionists, is that because they were persecuted during the 30s and 40s, that means that that book, 3,000 years old, is about them, and they have an uninterrupted link, and that is their land. I think that's nonsense, because I think that any of us can claim that that book was written about us. And I don't think what happened 80 years ago proves that the Old Testament is referring to this group of people who have now settled in Palestine. I think it's utterly, utterly nonsense. And I also think does Israel have the right to defend itself? No, because look how they do it. Look what they call defense. That's not defense.
The other point that has to be made as well is that they say, every time on the news you hear them say self-defense. If you actually look at what's happening, it's not self-defense. They're getting other people to defend them and send them weapons.
That's a very good point. They don't produce any of the weapons. Yeah, it's without America and more important, and Britain, because that's where we are. And so this is my sort of passion, because I believe that people that don't fit the narrative are unfairly demonized for all sorts of reasons. So I think that far right is basically a buzzword and is useless and is used to silence people. So I will stand up for people that are labelled far right. However, so many of those people that are labelled far right put you in a sort of false dichotomy where it's like, he's not far right, he just cares about British people. Support them. They're all Israel supporters. Every last one of them. Your Tommies, your Farages, your Katie Hopkins. All Israel supporters. And I'm fed up of it, because I can see that my country's been taken over by another country, which I don't even consider a country. It's a horrible terrorist training camp. And yeah, so that's what I'm here to talk about. Israel-Palestine has been the hot button issue in Speaker's Corner since well before October 7th happened, and I did not consider myself an expert, and I actually thought, oh no, the Speaker's Corner always have to be Israel-Palestine by 3 o'clock. All it is just, you know, a load of loud Muslims. Now I understand it. Now I understand why it's so important, because I think that we were supposed to do this when October 7th happened. I went and ordered a load of books about the history of Palestine, and quite frankly, you can't be neutral on this one. Yes.
How come 98% of people in Jordan say they're Palestinian?
Because they were kicked out of Palestine, probably.
No, they were kicked out. The Jordanians invited the Palestinians to go into the state as refugees. And what happened?
I'm Jordanian.
There's something called Black Palestine. Black September.
Listen to me, I'm
the
talking
Palestinians
to
opposed against the king.
West Bank, East Bank.
And then they were brought into Lebanon. What they do in Lebanon?
West Bank, East Bank.
The Palestinians have a problem.
I believe that
The
this is
Palestinians
all
have a problem
caused.
to the Arabs themselves, not to the Israel. To the Arabs. The Arabs, every time they try to have the Palestinians turn around and kick their ass. I'm telling you.
I think the Palestinians have a very legitimate grievance, basically, and I think that most white people.
Ever heard of the Nakba?
Exactly. There's been no justice for the Nakba. I believe that white people in general didn't even know that term, and most of them probably still don't.
He just listened to his warmongering.
I wonder whether I've had more shouting down than your average Speaker's Corner speaker today. I've had a lot of it. Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yes.
I don't mean the Jews, I mean Netanyahu government.
Yeah.
Corrupted the Holocaust itself.
Yes.
Because the idea of the United Nations, 1948, was built from the ashes of the Holocaust. And now he's corrupting the idea of the United Nations.
Yes, I believe that the Jewish sympathy card for the Holocaust is now expired because they've done their own one, and we've all seen it. And so you don't get to say this happened 80 years ago, therefore we get to do the same thing. You never did anyway. And yeah, more importantly that you've raised is that the UN was set up to enshrine certain rights, such as the refugees' right to return. Basically, what is it, 5-6 Palestinians are refugees right now, and they have their right to return, which is enshrined by the UN, set up to solve this problem. It's all blocked by Zionists. They can't return. So, and yeah, I 100% agree with you. The UN is supposed to enshrine these kind of rights, and Palestinians are basically not considered people on the world stage. I think they are by people, and there are so many nations that are standing up, like South Africa and Ireland, declaring Palestinian statehood. And I think the reason there is they say, right, we will develop an embassy there, and then if you're bombing them, you're also bombing us. So come and try it. You're declaring war.
Like Hannah Arendt said, even they haven't the right to claim their rights.
What, the Palestinians? Yeah, no, they've got nothing. And the more I learn about it, the more shocked I am. And I even need to take... There was footage, I don't know who's seen footage of the 30-year-old man who was kept in an Israeli prison for a month, and he's shell-shocked, right? You've seen it? That's the first video where I've been like, I'm not ready yet. Have you seen the picture of the baby yet? I've seen the man holding it.
If you see the hostages held by Hamas, how good condition they're in, clean, fed, everything.
I'm reading a book on it at the moment. It's actually fiction, but it's it's an account of what it's like in an Israeli prison. And this was all way before this kicked off. This came out in 2020, yeah, that video of that shell-shocked man, like, I still need to watch it because I hit my limit, basically. Like, I've seen so much. And that one, it was like, you know what, today I'm not ready. Today I'm not ready. I know I will, I'm doing my bit, I am educating myself, but my God, has the world ever seen such gleeful joy at the killing of so many babies? I don't think so. I think the videos that you see out of Israel, particularly these ones of where they're holding up the women's underwear, it's every good person should stand against. They justify it. Yeah, and you guys both Muslims? Yeah, I mean, like, the campaign, the amount of money that is being pumped into getting men like me to be scared of men like you through Tommy Robinson, etc., is scary, it's disgusting, it's treasonous, and I got arrested in Tommy's rally 3 weeks ago for talking about it. And you know, Muslims will listen to my story. There was no crime.
What happened? It happened to Shamsi before.
I got
they arrested him for no reason.
Yeah,
they get arrested.
You can have a look at my dispersal note. It's got reasons on it. Yeah, it says that I was removed because there was a possibility of people doing harm to me. Right?
The only reason the war's going
There
on.
wasn't. There was no one that was removed. Don't worry, I wasn't actually.
Yeah, no,
they just needed to shut it down.
But when we look at history, anyone that goes against the regime of America and what they want,
central bank,
they get rid of them. For example, when we look at the Taliban, they were known as just normal mujahids funded by America. There were movies made to help them, to support them, to fund them. And then as soon as they went against the American regime and wanted their own law in Afghanistan, they claimed them as terrorists. Now when we look at Hamas, as soon as they broke out the Gaza Strip last year, and it went all over TikTok, everyone supporting Palestine, America instantly deems them as terrorists.
Bans TikTok. They try and ban TikTok.
Right before they broke out the Gaza Strip, Hamas was known as a government. As soon as they left the Gaza Strip, they're a terrorist group. Same thing with Taliban. They were known as a government organisation.
Well, yeah,
now they're terrorists.
Since you've got like people like Tommy Robinson claiming to be nationalists, I'm there saying, yeah, guys, Hamas, you're not legally allowed to compliment in this country, but I do consider them nationalists, very much the same way as Tommy Robinson. The same with the Taliban, right?
Yeah.
Just Afghani nationalists.
Yeah. The thing is with the Hamas, they don't believe in nationalism. They believe in a singular state of Palestine. The Jews can stay.
Well, it is national. Yeah, they're not.
The nationalism doesn't come from a racist.
Well, they want to re-establish Palestine
as a state.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most threatened nation on earth, so it's going to have a slightly different nationalism.
Something that surprises people is guess who helped fund Hamas in 2004?
Well, yeah, the thing about Netanyahu funding Hamas and all that is that I know a lot of people who've had to play catch up on this, like conspiracy theory, white guys as well. No, but it means that they still kind of have that terrorist thing imbibed in them, and so you get a lot of this. You get a lot of people saying like, "Oh, but Hamas is really set up and funded by Netanyahu," and it's like, you know what? That doesn't discount. That doesn't make them terrorists.
No.
Because Hamas are still, at the end of the day, just Palestinian orphans who broke out their prison.
Yeah, exactly.
And condemn it.
Any nation persecuted the same way as Palestine has been persecuted, I guarantee you'd have 10 times worse.
It's a caged dog. They're just a caged
dog. The same way, when Syria was persecuted by Bashar al-Assad and his regime, they created ISIS. So America funded ISIS. Yeah. The reason everything happened is because of persecution. Exactly. Persecution comes in hand with terrorism.
I'll tell you an example of some of the Islamophobic propaganda that I've seen on Twitter, because it's very promoted.
How did you know?
So Tommy Robinson and all his supporters at the moment will be paid quite a lot of money by Elon's Twitter for engagement, right? And since October 7th, there's been. You get paid a lot for anti-Muslim stuff. And there was one video a few weeks ago where it's a very blurry video of a man holding a chicken, doing that. The video is shot from above, and it says Syrian refugee raping a chicken. And here's the thing. I've met Syrians and Libyans, etc. Yeah. You guys have got lighter skin than this fella that was featured in this video, and so I thought, there's no proof that this man that we're seeing in this footage is Syrian, but Syria is right next to Palestine, isn't it? And this video is being seen by everyone, and they're saying, "Oh, look at these dirty Syrians," and I'm like, I don't think that's a Syrian because he didn't look like a Syrian. This is the kind of stuff that is currently being like massively funded on Twitter.
It's like anti-Muslim stuff anyway.
Yeah, and the other element of that is pro-Zionist, which is like
Pro-Zionism is basically the equivalent of sort of voting for Hitler. What it is, their whole
what you think really happened 8 years ago.
their whole regime is to wipe out the Palestinian race out of Israel.
The whole regime is to take Gaza.
At first, if you look at Hitler's history, his first idea was to get the Jews out of the country, right? What was Netanyahu's first plan? To get the Muslims out and the Palestinians out of the country. Now we look, they're just wiping us out. The same way Hitler
English,
live. It's the exact same thing that happened with
Yeah, and I do think we're in a really unique time now where I don't think that they continue. I mean, I'm also a Christian, so I've got theological thoughts on this. And there is a prophecy that says any Jewish kingdom cannot last more than 80 years. The last one being the Soviet Union, and Israel is now 76 years old, which is quite interesting. I don't even know where I was going with that.
I love Kufar.
But basically, we live in a unique time now where the last time they did this was Operation Protected Age, 2014, right? And that was certainly more mild than this. Now everyone's got smartphones, everyone's got social media, everyone can see it straight away. It's too late. It's happened. And I don't see how there's any going back from it. So I at least think we're living in interesting times where I think Israel is panicking.
Hitler.
You hear that
Hitler.
I mean, it's illegal to
Hitler
say
was a mentally sick man.
I think Hamas are chads because they're still fighting. And they are. I've seen Hezbollah's posts. Of course, I don't endorse them because that would be a crime. But it is interesting to see. Oh no, they're really going for it. You guys, because like people like this. No, but the police pulled you out for your own safety.
Yes, were you charged? Were you charged?
No.
Right, so the police just pulled you out for your own safety.
Yeah, but why?
They pulled you out for your own safety.
Have you seen the footage?
Why do you need to feel unsafe?
Yeah.
Because he was in a demonstration where there was and he was opposing.
And the logic that Steve is presenting is that Tommy Robinson supporters are so rabid and brainwashed that if I come up there and I tell them facts about Tommy Robinson and Paul
Golding,
they're all
going to roll over and say, "Oh, this guy's."
No, but the implication from the police that it says here, because it said risk of harm to self. Steve, can I speak? Is that the Tommy fans were going to come and punch me? That's the implication. Now, I actually
You're disagreeing with that. You don't think you were in any danger at that point?
I don't think I was, because if you look at the footage, it doesn't look like anyone is about to punch me. People are actually interested in what I have to say, which is why I want people talking about it. It's because I have to do. No, but I know I wasn't charged, but I was arrested for something which isn't a crime, and that was the entire point.
You were arrested.
Yes.
You had your rights read to you.
Yes.
Under what charge? Public Order Act.
Yeah, probably. Public. Yeah, I mean it's on.
What doesn't that say?
Yeah, it'll be on there. No, this is the thing. I've had to face a wave from the people that are supposedly on my side, like Steve here, saying you weren't.
I'm supposed to be on your side.
But seriously, for 3 weeks after this happened, I've been responding to messages saying you weren't arrested, you were just detained, which is basically a form of gaslighting.
How long were you detained?
Oh, not long, only about a quarter of an hour. But I was arrested because
people that were detained for 21 hours.
Okay, what's your point?
15 minutes.
What's your point?
Your suffering wasn't particularly.
I am not talking. I didn't claim that I suffered. I actually told the police officers when they were going through all of this. Sorry, mate. That they'd done exactly what I wanted them to do.
You're chuffed with them.
Yes, I am, because they've given me this sheet of paper which confirms that I was removed from a free speech rally against two-tier policing within 4 minutes for not committing a crime.
Was it free speech or was it two-tier policing? Separate.
Well, those were the.
No,
is that not? If I get arrested for speaking freely, am I not a victim of two-tier policing? Because the whole point is that Gideon Falter, the leader of the campaign against anti-Semitism, is free to do what he wants.
What's he got to do with this?
Absolutely everything.
How? Was he there?
Can I speak? Can I speak?
Tommy Robinson cries every time he gets arrested.
Yeah,
I know.
He's
pathetic,
a win,
isn't it?
and you are a major supporter of Tommy Robinson.
I am not.
But when Tommy Robinson,
3-4 years.
when Tommy Robinson, may I speak, guys? When Tommy Robinson got arrested in November, every newspaper covered it, and everyone that would give him a platform let him talk about how much of a persecuted victim he is, how the state, how the state is after him, and he's the #1 enemy, and life is just so hard being Tommy Robinson. So what I did was I went and recreated the exact stunt that he had done at his own event and got arrested within 4 minutes. But the difference between me and him is I don't say that I'm a victim and you should feel sorry for me. I'm just doing it to prove that this is the system that we live in. And I wonder whether because I don't act like a persecuted victim and I don't act like the big enemy of the state, I get such a negative reaction because I've got no one standing up for my rights the way that they would for Tommy. Because at the end of the day, I still think it's really interesting that I got arrested for a non-crime. This keeps happening today as well, doesn't it?
I'm being interrupted and touched by some strange.
No, so I want...
You know how to deal with that, don't you?
No.
You fucking know.
Can you define anti-Semitism for me, Steve? Because I've said anti-Jewish bigotry would work very well as a suitable... Absolutely, that works. Is that the definition?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily use the word bigotry, but that's as good as
Is that the
anything, I suppose.
definition that both of our major political parties are signed up to? Or are they signed up to the IHR
Do you know what's unfair as well?
definition?
When Zionists that happen to be Jewish say things that derogatory about Arabs, they're forgetting that Arabs are Semites too.
Well, of
so
course,
why is that
it's-
not anti-Semitism?
I mean, look, I'll break this down, and I don't know how people feel about the trans stuff, but I believe that trans women are appropriating the identity of real women. They're basically adopting... They're saying, we're women too. And no, you're not, because you've never had a period. And you don't have to deal with the issue. And you weren't sexualised as soon as you hit 12 years old, so you can't understand
If you
it.
ask, if
Now-
you've had surgery, that is the definition of trans. Just standing in front of someone.
Either way,
Sat-
I'm just making a comparison. I knew that I'd shock some of the girlies here, but probably not the men, by saying
You're
that.
already shocking. Why do you need to be
I'm
more
saying that
shocking?
trans women are men who are identifying as women, right? They've adopted that identity. Zionists are the same damn thing because they're not Semites. They don't come from that area.
Some of them, maybe.
They are trans
Some of them.
Semites.
Some of them.
Well, no, there were some Jews in Palestine, and I don't think anyone really has a problem with that. It's the European and American Jews that moved in and said, we're Middle Easterners. Look, I've changed my surname.
And I
Yeah, exactly.
as well
Yeah.
about the term anti-Semitism. It was coined in 1870 by a German called Wilhelm Marr. Now, the pervasive ideology at that time was Darwinism, and everything was about your biology. And the Jewish question in Germany, his way to respond to it was to say, the Jews have got bad DNA. This is rubbish.
This is rubbish.
This is complete rubbish.
The Jews do not have bad blood.
No, that is racism.
They just
and
have a
we
belief
reject that
system
completely.
that
Exactly.
we need to oppose
And
right now.
what is important is your belief system, not your DNA.
Because
I'm not
all
better
of
than
them.
you because I've got
Because
Irish
now-
DNA.
now- yes.
So
Are
it's
you a
it's
Christian? Are you a Christian?
it's-
Okay.
let
Well,
me
I
just
am.
fin-
Go for it.
so it's a false term. It doesn't really apply. Palestinians are Semites. So anti-Semitic, but it's a kind of a shorthand for what Nick says, which is anti-Jewish irrational hatred, which is not the same as criticizing Jews. That is not hatred of Jews, but that is being considered hatred of Jews, and that's the big problem we have.
Yeah, so one of the things about the campaign against anti-Semitism, which I brought up earlier, is that, like, I have interviewed everybody that has been called far right that will talk to me. And some of these people have beliefs that I do not share about exactly what you said about Jews basically having bad blood and being genetically predisposed to being evil people. There are people that believe this.
I know.
There are people that believe this. And they're also very small in number.
That'd be right.
They're very small in number. They have absolutely no institutional power. So anyone telling you to fear the Nazis is absolutely ridiculous because they basically are being thrown in jail for sharing books online, and they're not really a threat to anyone apart from themselves because they've adopted this stupid belief system, which is all about DNA.
What's his name in that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
The point is Zionists are racists themselves. The people that are Jewish, that happen to be Zionists, are racist because they believe that Jews are superior.
Well, can I tell you briefly
They're actually
about
white supremacists.
Can I tell you briefly about the origin of that racist ideology? When Jesus Christ, he was Semite, he was from the Hebrew people. When he was challenged by the Pharisees, who rejected the idea that he was a Messiah, they said to him, "We have got special DNA. We are Abraham's seed, sperma Abrahama."
Yeah.
which basically says God loves us because of our DNA. This is nonsense.
Racism. That's racism.
That is racism.
Can I speak?
And Jesus Christ rejected that.
Can I speak?
We don't talk about.
I'm Jewish. First of all,
go ahead. Sorry.
You have to understand that there are thousands, if not millions, of Jews in this world that are totally against the state of Israel, which is a racist state, and has nothing to do with Judaism. It's to do with colonialism. There's Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, which my grandparents came from, went to America because that was the land of the plenty, and that's where the land of opportunity. They had no interest in going to some desert in the middle of the Middle East, none whatsoever. It was the Zionists in Germany who did the deal with the Nazis, where they actually said, we want to go to Israel, Palestine.
The Havara Agreement.
Exactly, that's the Havana Agreement. They do not represent Jews at all. The vast majority of Jews that came from Russia and Poland, as my grandparents did, were Ashkenazi left-wing revolutionary Jews, which were behind the revolutions in Russia and in Hungary and in Germany. These were Jews who were internationalist Jews. Trotsky and all the rest of the Jews were internationalist Jews. They do not believe in a nation for Jews. It's a totally incorrect concept. And that's all been covered up because there are many other demonstrations here. I've been on several. There's a huge contingent of Jewish organisations on the Palestine demonstrations.
Huge. It's huge. Absolutely huge. And that's it. Is the campaign against anti-Semitism wants to convince the entire of Britain that men like that either don't exist or don't count. Right? It's one or the other.
Can I say just here around it? The problem is though, if you talk about Trotsky and Marx and people like Wilhelm Reich, these are all internationalist Jews, but they're also promoting transgressive ideologies. And well, I would say transgenderism, pornography, Marxism, these are all transgressive ideologies.
They've got nothing to do with each other.
They don't. I'll tell you what they have to do. Can I tell you what they have to do with each other?
Oh, I hope you will. This is Speaker's Corner after all.
They are essentially Jewish ideologies.
But you have to understand it from a Christian theological perspective.
And as a Catholic, I reject them. I love Jews. I would see them culturally as my enemy, but these are transgressive ideologies.
You're equating anything you don't personally like and put it into the same bucket and condemning everything in that bucket because it suits you ideologically.
No, let me use.
Yes.
Can I use his terminology?
You can do what you want.
Let's finish. He said they were revolutionaries, and I agree with you. But I don't. Revolution.
I agree with revolution. That's fair enough.
Revolution.
That's fine. But the point is, and the Jews in the Bolshevik Party were internationalist Jews.
Exactly.
And Lenin, who wasn't Jewish, said the whole point of Bolshevism was an international revolution.
Well, isn't there a book that was called sort of Bolshevism versus Zionism, Fight for the Heart of the Jews or so? And these were two competing ideologies.
Initially, the communists wanted Israel to be the Soviets at the time, they wanted Israel to be a communist nation. But the Zionists went with the Americans, and then they became enemies. So there was a connection.
I mean, I think that the point that we want to get to is most of the people that I've spoken to today, whether they've been English, whether they've been Muslims, or whether they've been Jews, are basically all on the same side here, which is we know that what's going on in Gaza is a Holocaust, and I will use that word, and that our media, and the media and our political system are 100% behind it. And how are we going to get through this? That's the whole reason that I'm here today, and it's been quite wonderful because I've had great conversations with Muslims and Jews alike, and there was that wonderful moment earlier where there was a Palestinian and an Israeli who both agreed with me, but there were two other guys who were just shouting us down, and I went, whoa.
Are Palestinians Arabs?
Yes.
You're one of the people who wants to shout us down. The point is that there was a magical coalition right there of somebody that had grown up in Israel and left because he served in the IDF and hated it. There's a Palestinian that can't live in Palestine anymore because of what's going on there, and me, who's concerned about the English being lied to and being told by Tommy Robinson that the biggest threat is the Muslims and the Jews did nothing wrong, or the Zionists are completely blameless, and all of this because it's so destructive to our social fabric. It gets us all fighting, and so today is the opposite of that, and that's exactly what Speaker's Corner is for. And we've had a great time. I think. Like the people that have been opposing me have been, quite frankly, rabid. I would have said it was borderline demonic, because that's how I view the world now. Is there was laughing, there was mockery, there was saying that I'm irrelevant and nobody cares about me. And it's like, none of this is argument. This is just sort of red-faced anger. But everybody who is invested in what's been going on, which should be everyone with a conscience after the past 8 months, like everyone's heart aching for Palestine, everyone feel like it's changed them, what they've seen on social media the last 8 months. Like, I think we live in a new world now where I've watched so many horror movies in my time, so I should be desensitized. And it turned out I wasn't. No amount of horror movies prepared me for seeing that many heads of children blown apart for no reason.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible that Israel could lose this.
I think
they could lose because
I think they're destined to.
They are, because sooner or later the chickens are coming home to roost.
Well, they also have to keep.
Lose it.
Yeah, well, you hear internal reports, and it's the job of the Israeli government to keep morale up in Israel, and morale is through the floor because Israel knows that it is a global pariah. Hamas is actually still fighting them after all this time. IDF members are still dying.
They cannot follow up one other thing as well. What I think is so wonderful about today, and I'm so grateful to this man, is what's the way forward? We have to agree that there's a moral order that we all signed up to, because we're rational creatures. Whether you're a Muslim or a Jew or an atheist, we're rational creatures, which means we can find the truth and we can agree what's right and wrong. And if we do that, then we can have peace and we can live together.
And the issue we have at the moment is that the Zionists, whether they're Jewish or whether they're just these mouthpieces, because there's so many of them, Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray, Tommy Robinson, exactly, clean your room, bucko, but give them hell, Netanyahu. Like, what in the hell? And it's so obvious that all of these voices for free speech were put up there 10 years ago. Jordan Peterson was made famous basically for this very moment, it looks like, because why are they all supportive of a genocide? I think it's because they've been paid to be, because there's no other logical explanation for it.
Ben, they're also profiting from what I think you mentioned earlier, which is alluding to they know if they support the idea of Zionism, they guarantee their delusional apocalypse revelation happening.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's terrifying, because Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray aren't supposed to believe in this. But
they're liars.
Well, we're talking about
clearly liars. Jordan and your other fella,
Douglas Murray, Kevin Spacey's #1 defender. Did you know that?
Absolutely, fundamentalist Christians. But they think they're just a superior type of Christian.
Well, no, yeah. So dispensationalism is really stupid, and I wish we had some of these Christian Zionists that are normally winding up the Muslims. There's an Israel flag over there with the UK flag. That's my point. Because on the tin it says that this is a British nationalist event, right? So why would an anti-Zionist British nationalist like me be made unwelcome there? Do we not encourage a difference of opinion? Well, I don't believe that they do, because I believe that event is ultimately run by Israel, and that is the reason that I got arrested at the last one for talking about the campaign against anti-Semitism, and everybody cheered.
You'll see the star, the Israeli flag in Tommy Robinson's demonstration.
Exactly, everywhere.
And there's a rabbi from America who was a solid supporter of fascism in this country. Yeah. And there are fascists in Israel, real Nazi-type fascists.
Well, it's the most fascistic country there is.
It's a fascist apartheid system. Yeah. And we, Britain, anyhow, America, always support the most right-wing fascists in the world in order to get their point. They do it in Ukraine, they do it in Israel, they do it all over. And they make no bones about it. Quite openly.
in Holland as well, the Zionists and the friends with Geert
Well,
Wilders.
Geert Wilders, his wife is Jewish,
Is Jewish,
as far as
yeah.
I believe, you know.
Yeah, which
Um,
again seems
but-
like a sad. It's like his wife is Jewish. That doesn't.
I mean,
why
exactly.
should that automatically make you a hardcore, ultra genocidal, Holocaust denying Zionist? Because this man is Jewish,
Exactly.
and he's not. And that's why I believe that it's.
That's right.
And I really do think people like you are so brave.
When I was,
I really do.
When I was 16, 17, I thought Israel was a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. But you were lied to.
I was lied to, and I was a child then. I started thinking about things and realised exactly what's going on in the world, and you soon realise that this Israeli are worse, if not worse, than the Nazis.
Yeah.
They're doing worse things now in Israel than the Nazis did, even in the Second World War, when the Nazis would go into a village and destroy the entire village and shoot everyone in it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically what Nazism is.
God bless you, brother.
And,
Yeah,
and that's what the Israelis are doing. They're just killing people, men, women, and children, all over, just for the fun of it.
I know you
Just
can
for the
see
fun of it.
interviews with them.
They have no morality at all.
Well, yeah, and that means that the weight of this must be greater for you than it is for me.
Well,
It's
no, I've long since lost my guilt about it because I know that
It must be immense to
being
process.
Jewish is no different from anyone else.
Yeah.
You can get a Jewish criminal, you can get a Christian criminal, you get an
Well,
Islamic
this
criminal.
is the
It's no
ultimate.
different.
This is the real kicker. Is the term I'm using at the moment is the Jewish mafia because it delineates, right? And if I say we need to talk about the Jewish mafia, I'm getting sick of the Jewish mafia, which includes people like Jeffrey Epstein and the island and all of that. And it includes Gideon Falter of the campaign against.
A lot of the early Zionist militias